Hello, everybody. Good morning. We are having the best time here on DG in the morning on DG 360. Get your butts on over here. Have fun with our live audience that we love. They are here. They are energized. They are called the algorithms. They pick everything that we watch. All those little tabs up there that everybody who has OCD cannot stand that say, get those tabs off. I can't believe all these tabs. These are what they pick for us. This is what we watch. And today the algorithm decided that it wants me to watch something that is entitled Nintendo Bans BlackRock from Buying Its Shares. What? I mean, BlackRock owns the entire world. For those of you who don't know what BlackRock or who BlackRock is, it's owned by a dude named Larry Fink. And there is a weird history of BlackRock. I'm not going to get into it, but let's see why Nintendo bans the devil from buying its shares.
Has Nintendo put a ban on BlackRock buying its stock? That seems to be the case, at least from Kyoto Bank, where they're saying they're not allowing some of these high-profile Western investment banks from investing into Nintendo, which is something that's shocking that there's a debate within Japan and within BlackRock and these investment banks where they want to really heavily invest in Nintendo.
Let's talk a little bit about this. And there's something called the carry trade. And the interesting thing is that Japan has a currency called the yen. I believe it's the yen. Apologies, but I'm pretty sure it's the yen. And you can borrow yen at basically 0%. And the biggest thing that people in the finance world all over the world used to do, still do, but they're starting not to do, is they would take out yen and they would use that yen and pay barely any interest on that yen to pay it back. But they would take that yen, borrow the amount of yen that they would need. And we're talking billions here. We're not talking like little amounts. We're talking like big ballers, big whalers. And they would take it and they would buy American assets or American equities, real estate, anything that garnered a return. And then they would take the money that they made off the investments and they would pay back the small paltry amount of the loan back to Japan. And it was like a free way to arbitrage around 5%. So, you know, imagine what is a 5% of $1 billion, right? What is that, 50 million? So imagine, apologies, I'm just, you know, going off my own brain, which might be slightly wrong, but imagine just continually making $50 million over and over again in the span of like a year or so. So, oh, what's up, E-Rad? It is a big word. Thank you, Maddie. E-Rad's coming over with 12 viewers. We love him. Thank you, E-Rad. Love you, bro. So what ended up happening is within the past month, what ended up happening was this carry trade unwind. And that's because the Bank of Japan raised their interest rate, or the rate at which basically their government, you have to pay back the interest on the debt. Okay, they raised it up by like 25 basis points, which is like 0.25%. Okay, not a big raise. Okay, and our stock market took a big old poop. I mean, our stock market went vroom because people that were involved in this trade of borrowing yen and buying assets and then paying back that particular loan, the yen got stronger. And people were like, well, wait a second, that means I owe more money. And all those positions started to unwind, and then they had to pay off the debt. And they got margin called. That's basically what happened. So that's why our stock market went home. So interesting that Nintendo's banning an American company. So like I'm starting to feel like economically speaking, Japan is starting to push back against America slightly. Like, okay, we're kind of tired of this happening to us, so we're going to kind of raise the rates slightly and see what happens. Well, whoa. Then the head finance minister in Japan was like, well, we won't do that again. We won't do it again because they are still dependent on King Dollar. And this is why you see a lot of countries getting off the dollar as the global reserve, because, you know, they know that America can't pay back their debt. We're 33 trillion, 34 trillion now in debt. And we just basically print our own money to pay off our own debt, which is insane. We just got downgraded too, to I think AA from AAA. I can't remember. I believe that's what's happened within the past year. So Nintendo banning, let's see what Nintendo's at. Let's see, banning BlackRock from buying shares. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know you could do that. Nintendo's at 14, 18 a share. They've been fluctuating between 10 and 15 for the past 5 years. But banning BlackRock from buying Nintendo's like, nope, sorry, you can't do it. It's crazy.
But they're being restricted by Kyoto Bank, the main investor into Nintendo shares. And I think this is an interesting dynamic, especially when we've been seeing what's been happening in Japan when it comes to a lot of the content that's coming out there. We see a lot of censorship, a lot of rechanging of the cultural dynamics of some of these games, specifically Square Enix. Square Enix is kind of a developer lost in its own political correctness right now with a lot of the games that they're producing, where their main focus is the game essentially, but they always have to add in this political correctness that is becoming an overstay and a driving force for a lot of the properties that they're putting out there. And I think it's annoying a lot of the fan base now, but I think the main thing that is annoying the fan base when it comes to these developers is that they're putting a backseat to the main gameplay and story mechanics in favor of these topics. I think this is the thing people are annoyed about when it comes to the development of games.
I'm loving these comments I'm seeing here. It's fucking great.
Now, within Japan, where we have all these developers that are trying to placate this political progressive agenda to the detriment of the gameplay and the story itself. And I think that's the thing people didn't want to see happen with Nintendo. We always hoped Nintendo would steer clear of all the censorship, all the changes, all the DEI programs, everything that's oriented towards a political progressive outlook, rather than making good gameplay and good games that people can play for a long time. That was the thing that people loved about Nintendo, and that's why Nintendo still thrives today, where all the creativity is at the focus for Nintendo, and it's not distracted by the influences of Western society and their modern day political progressiveness. And I think this is a situation that we're seeing with Nintendo nowadays, where it's allowed to be who it is, and it's allowed to promote the people that have those standards within the company without influence from the Western games development thought process. And I think this is the thing that we're seeing in Square Enix, we're seeing in Capcom, Bandai Namco, where they're ignoring the customer base in favor of this political ideology that has a net negative impact on the games that they're putting out, because a lot of the games they are putting out are failing. I think save for Capcom, every other game developer that has dabbled into this political progressive ideology has been meeting failure after failure. I think this is a situation that Capcom has for now threaded the needle imperfectly so far, but still has produced.
First off, I really like the way this guy just hits with some truth bombs, so I'm gonna like this. What's this dude's name? Only 6,000 subscribers. So far, so good. So far, he's captivated me here. Let me just see I'm gonna link this for you guys if you're interested in this dude. So far, pretty dead on.
Games that people are responding to, and I think that is going to end eventually for Capcom as well. And it's crazy to see Kyoto Financial Group stating this in their response towards a forceful sale recommended by U.S. financial institutions, governmental institutions, and investment banks, putting the pressure on Kyoto Bank to sell Nintendo shares. And I think this is the crazy thing we're hearing right now, where everyone's trying to get them to sell those shares and include Western input into their Nintendo gaming market. And it's just weird to hear that, but there's a lot of influence trying to push them into doing that. And they're saying flatly, no, we're not going to do that. We feel that is an improper thing to do. We have 1 trillion yen in unrealized gains that we don't care about. We're going to hold on to these shares, and we're going to wait for the proper investor to actually come, and we're going to select them based on their conservative outlook on Nintendo. And I think that is something we never hear from investors that hold these properties in their hands. They're not looking for a conservative buyer. They're looking for someone that was just willing to buy, and they're giving up their influence on these companies. But the CEO of Kyoto Financial Group is saying, no, we're waiting for conservative investors that are more in line with our personal moral standards. And that
which BlackRock has fuck you money. Like BlackRock is the richest entity on the planet. They might actually run the world secretly. You know, Larry Fink might actually be the supreme emperor of Earth. So for them to just be like, nah, we don't need your money is like, wow. Like that. It's probably a substantial investment too. It's not going to be a small investment. I mean, if BlackRock gets involved in something, it's going to be probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which is a lot for any gaming company, no matter the size. So, I mean, wow.
It even suggested the countries they're looking towards. They're looking towards Arab, Saudi Arabian countries to invest in Nintendo rather than Western developed nations. And I think this shows that all these Arab financial groups actually like the games that they're producing as is and don't want to inject Western ideologies. I like the discussion in chat between Maddie and E-Rap. I think that's an amazing thing to hear, especially when you see what's happening with Fatal Fury, a game property that has been purchased by Saudi Arabia, where it's being kept as is, at least the design, the characters, and overall property in its original form, where they're including the things that we like about SNK.
Here's the thing. Can we just hear it for boobs right now? We just hear it for boobs. I never want to see boobs go away from video games. Let me just tell you, you know, a lot of people might get mad at me for that, but like, I don't care if the boobs aren't a lesbian. I don't care if the boobs are black, white, Asian. I don't care the nationality of the boobs. I don't care the sexual orientation of the boobs. I am just a big boob proponent, and I never really want to see boobs leave video games. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just thank you.
And it seems like the people that are owning this stock and overall property are respecting it. And I think this is where Japan is thinking, okay, we're only going to sell to these type of buyers where they will respect our properties. And you can see this SNK, Saudi Arabia's 96% ownership hasn't affected the game. And I think that's what we're seeing. And maybe Nintendo is leaning towards selling mostly of their available shares towards Saudi Arabian type of company with some restrictions of their sale itself. And I think that's probably what we're going to see, where they don't want Saudi Arabia to sell it to BlackRock or anyone else, where they're going to have to sell it back to some Japanese bank where they have those shares secured. And I think that's the situation we're seeing right now developing in Japan, where they're trying to stay away from the American investors themselves, because the American investors are not focused on the prosperity of the games companies that they do invest in. They're focused on their political agenda that they want to have surface all across the whole world.
And that's, I think, what the point is, and what he's trying to get across, Maddie, is like, you know, the money comes with like the agenda, you know, and that's why a lot of the Eastern world is worried about what's happening with the Western world and the agendas and the policies that America's pushing. It's like, here's the money, but along with this money, you have to basically do everything we think is the correct thing to do. And culturally speaking, like in different areas, like they're just like, eh. Yeah.
Regardless of the money that it's losing.
It could be true. Yeah. I mean, like there's contractual obligations. Absolutely. But like, I would say that like, you know, these DEI kind of policies are being pushed a lot more than other cultures, you know, like the American culture is pushing that out on everything that large corporations are investing in, large American corporations are investing in. Like, it's like, okay, you know, but you have to align to what we think is culturally correct to do, to the point where it just is the only thing that matters. And, you know, like really what matters at the end of the day for gaming is that the game is fun, you know, like really at the end of the day, the game has to be fun. That's it. It's pretty much that simple, you know?
I think that's apparent for a lot of people that have been playing games recently, that most games are being made out of pure ideological reasons. I think that's what people don't want to see happen with Nintendo. They want Nintendo to be that nostalgic company that it's always been. It hasn't been anything else. It's been a games company that loves making games for game players, and we don't want to see that changed in any way. And I think what we're seeing as a result of Kyoto Financial Group is that they have concerns for the actual games that are being produced. surprisingly. And it's just crazy to say that an investment bank group is concerned about the quality of games coming out from Nintendo, and they're willing to lose money in order to protect that. And I think that is a crazy thing to see in this modern age of gaming and investment, and these investment banks and political correctness kind of taking the industry by storm, where we have a bank saying, we're going to protect this video game developer because we don't trust you with this property. I think they're right to think that. We see all the examples happening in our faces where Final Fantasy is just a pale shell of itself. And I think a lot of these Square Enix and Capcom games are having a similar experience where
the thing that's going to eventually happen is, and it's already happening on a wide scale in the gaming world, is the indie developers are going to make whatever fucking game they want, and they'll just have it fan funded. More and more titles are being fan funded and are free from the influence of corporate deals. Just that's the natural evolution of it. Especially once Web3 gets up and rolling and they figure out a way to get adoption going into the Web3 space, it'll definitely be, once most games are blockchain oriented, it'll definitely be like more indie, power to the indie devs. Indie devs can circumvent anything with fan funded. Like if they get that kind of fan funded backing, proof's in the pudding. I mean, look at all the fan funded games out there now. I mean, we had Todd Darcy from Stutter Fox Studios on. I interviewed him, talked about that, and eventually, interesting thing though, Todd ended up going with a publisher. Todd ended up going back to a publisher. And the publisher's a pretty cool publisher, but you know, so like there are money issues. You see a lot of indie guys, they'll start off and they'll be like, shit, I don't think I have the money to go through with this. But then on other, like Manor Lords, the dude that made Manor Lords had enough money from his fans. So you will see this. You will see like a more progression. Like there's plenty of indie titles that are actually more popular and sell more units than AAA games, than some AAA game titles. So, you know, these are the big dogs, though. These are the very well established companies from our childhoods, you know. And it's interesting, like somebody as large as Nintendo, just like, no.
Gamers are just not even interested in these games anymore because the response that we're seeing in the Western world is in favor for things that people don't really like or perceive as good, that are only acceptable to gaming journalists. And I think that is the thing that we're seeing happening in the industry right now. The only thing that is being favorably responded to is something that is being praised by the modern day political correctness group that is in charge of the industry. And I think that is the result of an industry in decline and collapse. And I think this is a chance for the Eastern games industry to grab hold and control of the industry, because the Western games is leaning into the failed methodologies that are leading to multiple game studios closing down and over 30,000 jobs being lost. And I think that's the opposite of what's happening in the Eastern games development sphere. They're making money, and it just shows that it's not about the economy. It's about what you're making in that industry. And it seems like the Western games development sphere is making terrible games, and it looks like Nintendo noticed that, and they're sticking to their guns where they're only going to sell to people that want to uphold the standard that they have for Nintendo. And I'm happy to hear that. Hopefully this actually works out. It seems like they already have a focus on a buyer with some restrictions on their sales, so it's probably going to go to Saudi Arabia. It's probably the same person that bought SNK. He's probably going to buy into Nintendo, and we won't have to worry about too much woke stuff actually appearing in Nintendo. So this is something I'm glad is happening, and it's kind of
more of the corporations, more of the game devs are going to do this because they don't want to lose the money. You don't want to lose the money because if gamers think you're woke, you go broke for sure. So more and more companies are going to steer away from that, and they're just not going to subscribe to like any type of like agendas that appear that way, like where that's the only thing that counts in the game, and there's no gameplay and there's no mechanics, but there's a great lesbian love story or a wonderful transgender character. Or those can be in any game you want. Just make it fucking fun, right? I mean, at the end of the day, make it fun. But don't push an agenda so hard that it's so fucking apparent, and you're trying to teach me a lesson like I don't understand. Like when people push agendas like that, the message is this: you're a racist, you're sexist, you're homophobic. Like that is what eventually comes across. That's why people get mad, because you have a corporation telling you right off the bat, like, you're a bad person, you're a racist, and this is how to not be a racist. You're a bad person, you're homophobic, and this is how to not be homophobic. You're a bad person. And, you know, like, you feel it coming through, and you're being taught by a corporation. Are you fucking kidding me? And that's the anger. Do people not get that? That's truly where the anger's coming from. But people take a lot of shit out of context, and they say, well, if you don't like these agendas, then you must be a racist. Then you must be homophobic. Then you must be a sexist. It's not it. It's not it at all, because we can see through it. You can't fucking fool gamers. Gamers know what the fuck's up. We know right off the bat. And the easiest, most simplest thing in gaming is just make the fucking game fun. I'll play a game with lesbians. I'll play a game with transgenders. I don't give a fuck about anything as long as it's fun. Make it fun. At the end of the day, the game has to be fun. But if you're pushing these narratives on me like you think I'm some type of fucking scumbag and I need to be taught a lesson, then you can go fuck off. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what the real issue is here. And, you know, I try to tell Christy this, and you know, she's like, oh, you sound like the biggest racist. You sound like the biggest sexist. You sound like the biggest. And I'm like, Christy, you're missing the entire point. The point is, corporations are trying to teach me something they think that I'm not. And I'm upset about it. And at the end of the day, that's all it is. That's all it is. I like this dude.